Well, a very big welcome everyone to this webinar, online seminar this evening. We're talking about a really, really important topic, raising smart riders, e-bike safety and responsibility. I'd like to first start off with a quick acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional lands from which we are joining today, of which there are many because we're joining from a number of different locations, from right across New South Wales and probably even further abroad. So we equally recognise elders past, present, and emerging, as well as recognising the continuing connections to country and culture. My name's Peter McLean, and I'm the CEO of Bicycle New South Wales. And I'm really proudly joined by our exclusive compensation legal partner, Leigh Davidson from Advantage Legal. A very big welcome, Leigh.
Thanks, Peter.
Leigh is an accredited specialist in New South Wales personal injury law who regularly pursues compensation claims on behalf of injured bicycle riders with a particular focus on their rehabilitation and compensation outcomes. Leigh regularly provides blog articles for online purposes to communicate that important information to bicycle riders. And you might have also seen him as part of the Ask the Expert section in our monthly EDMs as well. Advantage Legal are incredibly passionate and enthusiastic about helping bicycle riders in their time of need, and it's really reassuring to have them on board as a significant partner of Bicycle New South Wales. So we're so glad to have you here to chat, Leigh, particularly on this very topical issue, which has certainly gained a lot of media attention. And certainly in many cases, it has certainly attracted a lot of negative media attention. And in some cases, e-bikes can be a dirty word, especially when they're highly illegal and high power and ridden in a reckless way. However, it's important to note that from the outset, that the vast majority of e-bike users certainly do the right thing, and there's plenty of them also riding fully compliant legal e-bikes. So we want to recognise that positive behaviour as well. Tonight, what we're going to be focusing on in terms of the topic areas is current legal versus illegal e-bikes and how that will change into the future. Whether e-bike riders have age limits, what powers police have to deal with illegal e-bikes, what happens if you're injured by a car on a legal or an illegal e-bike, what happens if you're injured by an e-bike and whether you claim compensation, whether you can claim compensation, and then a range of topics regarding kids riding e-bikes and whether parents can be liable for their actions as well. We'll hopefully have some time for some questions at the end because we know that this is a very important topic for so many. And if you do have questions, you're very welcome to pop them into the chat as well. And we'll ensure that during the course of that Q&A, we have a bit of a look in on that and try and address that at some point as well. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Leigh to say a few words.
Thanks for that intro, Peter. Great to be here. And I agree, e-bike's a very topical subject at the moment. Just before we kick off, I might just drop the usual disclaimer in to say that what we're talking about today is really just general in nature. Your personal circumstances do matter, as does the purchase of the bike that you may be looking at or have already purchased. So just the information we're providing here is really just intended to educate you. And if you do need specific advice about a bike, reach out to Bicycle New South Wales. I'm sure the team would be happy to help. But if you'd like something to do with an injury claim, you can reach out to me directly or to Advantage Legal at any time. We'd be more than happy to help. With that out of the way, Peter, I might kick off with an opening question for you, just to get the ball rolling, if that's all right. And
Definitely.
given that the world of e-bikes seems to be changing so rapidly, so if we were looking at an e-bike now, what e-bikes are currently legal in New South Wales?
Well, we've got a nice little slide for that, which Yvonne's kindly made look a lot more easy to see and understand. So I'll let people absorb that, but I will talk to some of the key points. of course, which is the current exact definition of a e-bike in New South Wales under Transport for New South Wales is an electrically powered assisted bicycle which has a maximum continued rated power of up to 500 watts. Now, I have to say that will be changing to 250, but at the moment it is still 500 watts for the coming well, almost 3 years. This power must be progressively reduced as the bicycle's speed increases, and it must cut out at the speed of 25 kilometers an hour. They are allowed to have a throttle assist up to the speed of 6 kilometers an hour, but of course it cannot exceed that number of 6 kilometers. Transport for New South Wales, and this is a particularly important point and going forward, Transport for New South Wales has formed the legal opinion and view that if an e-bike has the capacity to operate higher than 500 watts, but is limited by software to be lower, it is still considered illegal. So a classic example in this situation is perhaps a 1,000 watt device which has a some sort of limiter restrictor on it that reduces it down to 500 or 250 watts. That is still under that formed viewpoint is still considered an illegal device. So that's really, really important, not just now, but going forward um, as well. The it's important to note on that great little picture slideshow there of the types of e-bikes there. The easiest way to explain this to lots of people is simply if we're looking to our left, the green column, legal e-bikes, they look far more like bicycles than motorbikes or other high-powered devices, with the exception maybe of an e-cargo bike, which is designed to carry additional loads and kids and shopping and pets and whatever else people put in them. But the other bikes certainly look much more like bicycles, but they are legal e-bikes in those situations. Pedal assist again, up to 25 kilometers an hour. Throttle assist up to 6 kilometers an hour. And generally, or in almost all circumstances, we see them as being much higher and better quality components. There's anti-tamper-proof devices on them, safety features and locking features, and quality batteries as well. Whereas on the right-hand side, you'll notice that there's some high-powered devices there. Some of them don't have pedals, for example, so they can't be pedal assist. Most of them will have throttles, which will allow you to uh, go over the 6 kilometer throttle speed. And in most of the examples as well, the throttle will actually exceed 25 kilometers an hour, being, of course, an illegal device. They're also got a significant amount of additional power. Some of them 5, 6, 7, 8,000, and even more in some instances. They have of power. So in that instance, we're talking about 10 and 20 times the legal amount of power that you are actually allowed to have. These, in instances, are actually far more powerful than some of the registered motorbikes, for example. But we also do see that some of these devices, certainly very poor quality components, they can be hard to repair, for example. Easily modified settings with putting codes and changing things on them to make them go faster. And as a result, we also see the poor quality and handling and inefficiencies involved. They're not actually designed to do 40, 50, 60, and plenty more kilometers above that. And when they do, they handle poorly. The suspension and the brakes and the steering is nowhere near as effective. And that's an important point to note as well. That's probably,
That's a
well, I
pretty
could talk
good,
forever on e-bikes, but
pretty
that
intense
probably covers
summary.
that
That's
enough.
good though, Peter. Thank you. Um, so, and I think we've already had a question on this, but good to see that we're uh, hitting the mark. So, what proposed changes will occur and when? So, we're looking at 2029, I believe.
So there's changes coming in now, and there'll be a 3 year essential, I guess, an exemption period for 3 years. So up until the 1st of March 2029. So anything that was legal, because we had a standard of 500 watts, for example, which used to be the case. Anything that was 500 watts will still remain as a legal e-bike for that 3 year period up until March 2029. And that's when officially the European standard, which is the gold standard for e-bikes around the world, EN 15194, will come into effect. It's important to note that many of the good quality e-bikes, which many of the members of Bicycle New South Wales are already riding, um, are probably legal e-bikes already and meet these existing standards, which is good news for everyone that has made that responsible and wise decision to make sure that they're purchasing a legal device, because they do have the anti-tampering proof measures and safety features and mechanisms in place as well. But certainly from that point on, they will be from March 2029, they will be 250 watts going forward, which is essentially what the previous standard a few years ago was in place in New South Wales, as is indeed the other powers that e-bikes are in other states and territories of Australia, 250 watts again.
And I think there was something around anti-tamper proof measures and safety features, tagging and things like that that need to be adhered to as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So the anti-tampering within the standard itself of EN 15194, there's anti-tampering measures in place. They're constantly improving, but essentially they won't allow you to simply put in a code and unlock a device or modify it quickly and easily. Like all things, there are some instances where they can still be modified, but obviously that takes a fair bit more time and effort. You can't simply put a code in them and then change it into a high-powered device.
Wonderful. And obviously, given that, in this space, a lot of parents are buying e-bikes for their children, there's been mention of imposing an age limit. Has anything in that space turned around and actually been locked in stone yet? What are we looking at?
Nothing. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion, a lot of expert round tables and discussion papers in place. The government has certainly flagged that they want to move towards implementing an age restriction of between 12 and 16 years of age. This is for all e-bikes, including, of course, legal devices, which are EN 15194. Now, that's a major concern for us because we certainly believe at Bicycle New South Wales, and the feedback we've received is certainly that legal e-bikes that are low powered and low speed don't pose an additional risk to young people. And certainly this has been reflected in our crash data and observations that we collect. But also, if we are going to land on an age limit, we would certainly be advocating for that to be 12 years of age, purely because that is the age that a person will probably transition from from primary school to high school, and when they might be also becoming more independent in their life and attending various activities, including going to school, and perhaps even their first job as well. So we certainly believe that that would be a fair and equitable outcome if it was put at that much lower age limit. Of course, in the instance that they're legal, safe, and low speed e-bikes in the first place.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, and I'm sure that a lot of parents are actually concerned about, purchasing the right or, accidentally purchasing the wrong e-bike as well. So I think age limits will add that further, something that parents need to be particularly aware of. It's a further hurdle, I suppose, to getting people into bikes. So I think the 12 age group certainly makes sense with what you're saying to link it with the schools. So
Most
thank you for that.
definitely. Yep. Well, that's enough questions to me. I'm going to ask you a question now, Lee.
Okay.
Being the legal expert, so what are some of the new powers that police might be given to deal with illegal e-bikes if that legislation passes?
So at the moment, the police have powers to fine a bicycle rider for a breach of the law. So same as if you were jaywalking or what have you, but also if you run a red light or along those lines. So there have been recent reports of police now dyno testing e-bikes, so actually putting them onto on effectively a mobile dyno and testing their power output. And so, in order to determine whether they are legal or illegal, so it's not so much the power, but they're actually seeing new enforcement measures that are actually already within the legislation. Currently, at the moment, the police do have seizure powers, but they're quite limited for e-bikes because they're effectively have to be viewed as an illegal motorbike. So they will. So if, for example, on your slide from before, if one of those bikes didn't have pedals, for example, and it was clearly just a illegal motorbike, effectively not registered, well, then theoretically the police could seize that motorbike on the spot. Um, in the future, it's been proposed that the police will have seize and crush powers. So it's not like right now, but in the future, they will be looking for legally modified or flat out illegal by design bikes. And from what we understand so far, it looks like that the police will actually have the ability to seize and crush those bikes. So it looks like they're going to be taking quite a hard stance on it. The crush power isn't here now. So for those who are looking, are you concerned about it now? It's not a measure that the police are doing right now, to the best of what we're aware of, but that is something that's been proposed for the future. So um, I think that the way that I've heard that people are concerned about this, and it could be simply because they don't want to lose a several $1,000 bike. But I think you just need to keep in mind that much like when you're driving a high-powered car, if you're driving in an erratic or unsafe manner, you're going to attract the attention of the police. And so it's no different to when you're on an illegal e-bike, or even if you're on a legal e-bike that's been modified. If you're driving in a manner that's or riding in a manner that's going to attract the attention of police, of course, um, if you're being unsafe, of course, you're going to attract the attention of the police. So I think a lot of it's got to do with the actual riding. And so as opposed to worrying about what the power of the police are, the police are far less likely to be concerned about your behavior if you're driving in a safe manner. So, number one, make sure that you actually have a legal e-bike. But number two, also make sure that you're riding in a safe manner so as to not attract the attention of the police in the first place. Um, I think that's probably it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's some really good points there, Lee, and it's important to make that distinction. Equally, if you were riding a legal e-bike in a really unsafe way in an area that you should be riding in, that would certainly attract police attention as well.
Absolutely.
So what happens if you're riding on a legal e-bike and injured by a motor vehicle in an accident in New South Wales?
So if the bike was legal, the CTP, and you've been hit by a car or like a motor vehicle, the CTP scheme will kick in. So that's part of the registration. You take out a green slip and then you register a vehicle here in New South Wales, and so that scheme will cover you. So you're entitled to get wage loss treatment and home care for at least 12 months, even if you're at fault in that scheme. So now, if you were not at fault, those benefits could be longer. And depending how seriously injured you are, you would be entitled to potentially to get a lump sum payout in addition to those benefits. So what the severity of your injury and whether you're at fault determine those entitlements. Keep in mind though, it's not as clear cut as he was at fault or I was at fault. It could be both were partly at fault, and then you sort of start to get into the nitty gritty of the legislative constraints. But the severity of your injury can be physical injuries and also psychological injuries. So, and what we see quite a lot with cyclists is that they do, in addition to obviously the accident is quite traumatic. So, in addition to sustaining quite often quite severe physical injuries, there are quite bad psychological injuries as well. So, it's important to make sure that if you are involved in an accident, that you get all of your injuries treated, not just the physical ones.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And it should be important to note we have mentioned it that that's for New South Wales CTP and it
Correct.
certainly can change well significantly in other states and territories. So it's important to keep that in mind as well.
Correct. The legislation varies. All of the legislation varies state by state. Every state and territory in Australia has got their own legislation around the way that they deal with motor vehicle accidents. So this is very New South Wales centric.
Yeah. And so what would happen if you were riding an illegal e-bike and injured by a motor vehicle in an accident in New South Wales? How does that change?
This is one of those it depends kind of answers. So the CTP insurer will look very closely at the bike, whether it was illegally designed, so flat out illegal, so number one, or whether the modification that you've done to it. And they're going to look at has that scenario contributed or caused the accident? And now, at the beginning of your claim, as long as you weren't doing anything illegal in the process, the first part of the scheme, which is no fault, is likely to respond still. So you'll get your wages, your treatment, and your home care potentially if you need it for up to 12 months. But then where you go from that 12-month mark and whether you're into the like lump sum payout, the damages component, that will depend on the view that the insurer takes, and then whether your legal representative is able to turn around and essentially rebut those allegations for you. So it will be it very centric on the particular circumstances of your individual accident, but it certainly does complicate things, and it certainly can ultimately deprive you of a considerable amount of compensation if the bike itself or the modification itself was the cause or contributed significantly to the accident.
Fantastic. And that would be no different if I was driving my car, caused an accident, and I hadn't fixed the brakes or something like that as well. It's a similar sort of scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, so like you've got a general obligation to maintain a vehicle one way or the other. And it does start to get a little bit more complicated once you start looking at defective vehicles and things like that, because you step outside of the CTP scheme potentially and start looking at product liability or professional
Yeah.
negligence in other areas, but centralized within CTP, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But as you say, every situation and scenario is different, and there'll be different things that come into play there. Shifting away from cars, what would happen if you were riding an e-bike and you injured someone? And an example of this is if an e-bike runs into and injures a pedestrian.
When there's no motor vehicle involved, so the CTP scheme doesn't respond, so then your uh, I should probably just note that there has been a push in the legal fraternity to actually try to get e-bikes included in the CTP scheme, particularly noting some of the issues that have arisen out of the high-powered illegal e-bikes, because people are getting quite seriously injured when they're colliding in this scenario. But it's not currently in. Now, there are cases that they're trying to effectively say that some illegally modified bikes or illegally by design bikes are effectively motorbikes and therefore should be covered under the nominal defendant scheme. But as I'm aware, there's nothing that's as yet has been determined, publicly determined. So
Mhm.
for all intents and purposes, right now, I would have to say that um, this is effectively not dealt with within the CTP scheme. So you're effectively bringing it then under the Civil Liability Act. So what that means is quite considerably different. There is no immediate entitlement to compensation. The injured person would need to sue the e-bike rider in their individual capacity. And you could be waiting years for an outcome because CTP is designed to sort of drip feed you wages and treatment and care along the way while you're waiting for the lump sum. It's akin to the way the workers' comp scheme works. However, civil liability doesn't work like that. So you're essentially waiting for the payout at the end. Now, obviously, that would be subject to settlement negotiations and things like that. But if you had to wait into a court case, you could be waiting years, and then there's appeal processes and what have you. You could be waiting quite a while. So it's quite a different situation. And ultimately, that's why the CTP scheme has been designed the way it has. But so you'd be suing the pedestrian would be suing the e-bike rider. Now, it's this exact scenario why you need to have public liability insurance. Without insurance, the rider may be left with a like significant compensation bill to pay. And sadly, yes, people do lose their houses over this kind of stuff because they don't have the means of actually the paying the damages bill. So they end up having to sell assets. So I like on this exact point, I can't emphasize enough. If you are riding, the importance of having public liability insurance, and Bicycle New South Wales does have that exact insurance as part of its membership. It doesn't cost any extra. You become a member, you get it. All right. So if you're not a member, this is that light bulb moment for you to become one, because this exact scenario will cover you in the event that something like that goes wrong, assuming you're riding a legal e-bike, of course. Now, some house and contents policies do have this kind of insurance, but there's a general trend moving away from e-bikes in a standard public liability insurance. So if you are relying on public liability insurance in your house and contents, I would strongly suggest that you read the policy wording and understand the financial limits. Because as I understand it, the industry trend is to move away. And so they are, making year-on-year changes in this space because of the increased risk of the modified e-bikes that are in the market at the moment. So not all home and contents policies are the same. Every policy is different based on the insurer. Even some insurers have sub-brands or different policies within their brand. So please be careful. Make sure that you review it year on year, because you could think you've taken it out 1 year, and then 2 years later you think you've got coverage and you don't. So pay attention. You can be left without coverage.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Thanks, Lee. And we've certainly noticed at Bicycle New South Wales there's been a number of changes just in the recent months in these policies, and certainly we encourage everyone to be members and get that public liability through Bicycle New South Wales. It does cover you up to $20 million of cover, so a significant amount of cover there. And the highest indeed in the country, which is really good peace of mind.
Mm. And I think people, just on that point, Peter, I think
Yep.
people fail to estimate sometimes how much money does get paid out in public liability cases. Um, if you injure somebody and they end up quadriplegic and they're quite young in their life, like the legal bill for that is going to be the compensation and legal bill is going to be quite considerable. So it's not something that people should take lightly, particularly um, you know, on bikes that are now able to travel considerably faster than a push bike, but also because they're heavier.
Absolutely. Another question for you. So does this change if the e-bike is illegal? Illegal, I'll say again, just to clarify, if it's illegal in design or modified to illegal specifications and the rider injures someone.
Well, look, it can actually be more significant than what it is under C2P, to be honest. So you can end up having no coverage at all. So the insurer can refuse to indemnify you entirely. So effectively, if your bike falls outside of most public liability insurers cover, if they do cover e-bikes, they have to meet the legal specifications. So if your bike is illegal, they're just not providing coverage for you a lot of the time. So that's pretty much industry wide as I understand it. So, it'd be uncommon for an insurer to cover somebody for doing anything illegal. So and it extends to public liability. And that's effectively you can be left again, you can be left with the total bill. And in the case of children, in some circumstances, the parents can be left with the bill. So, for example, if a child injures somebody considerably and they're under the age of 18, the parents can be left to pick up the tab. So again, it really does emphasize making sure that, if you have a child out on an e-bike as well, that you make sure, number one, that it's legal, and number two, that you've got insurance coverage in place, because accidents happen. Right? It's not necessarily that people are always doing the wrong thing, but accidents happen. Bikes have now got motors on them. Even when bikes didn't have motors on them, there were plenty of examples of children having accidents. That's why personal injury lawyers exist.
Mm.
We're here to help people in the event that they get injured. But at the same time, there's always somebody on the other side that unfortunately has caused that accident. And so, if you are unfortunate enough to be the person or the parent of the person that has caused that accident, well, and there's no insurance to cover you, you are left holding the bill.
So just to clarify, that's a really important point
Hmm.
there. So a parent can be liable if their child injures someone on an e-bike.
Yeah. So look, it's not a straightforward yes or no.
Yeah.
It's you really have to look at the negligence that existed at the time. So,
Yeah.
uh, for example, if the e-bike was illegally modified or illegal by design, and the parents knew straight out they'd given it to them, they knew it was illegal, but they let them have it anyway, and that child's gone out and ridden it in a negligent manner and has effectively caused an accident, causing injury to somebody. Yeah, there's a good chance that you're going to be left holding that bill, even if they're under 18. So it's not a one size fits all rule. You always have to look at the circumstances because the negligence comes into play here. But you can, yes, be left holding the bill for this. So uh, again, the obligation is on the parents to actually understand that what your child is writing and what they're doing, and ultimately making sure that they're being trained or having um, good, responsible riding out on the roads. I mean, if you think about it from a let's pretend it's a motorbike. You wouldn't hand the keys to a 12-year-old on a motorbike and then just go off you go and ride. It's not really any different when you're handing the throttle or the electric key to a 12-year-old to go on an electric bike. You got to make sure that they're trained. You got to make sure that they can ride in a responsible manner and they know the road rules. So, it's difficult, but the individual circumstances matter. And so the courts will look holistically at everything when they're looking at this to establish whether negligence on behalf of the parents existed.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen some tragic consequences, right across Australia from that. But it is good to see that there are a number of bicycle educators, really, really experienced and practical educators who can help in providing that safe training on public roads. So if you are interested in that, they change from location to location, and we can help provide you with some contact details. So yeah, get in touch with Bicycle New South Wales, and that's the other reason we've also been implementing a student bicycle education program into a number of areas as well. And we hope we can educate as many students as possible on that and roll that out further to ensure that students have those basic skill knowledge of the road rules and safety areas to keep them nice and safe. So a another question, Lee, can an e-bike be ridden on the footpath?
So right now, an e-bike is just considered to be a bike. So you all of the rules that apply to bikes apply to e-bikes. So if a child is under 16, they can ride on the footpath along with a supervising adult. Kids over 16 or adults on their own can't ride on the footpath. So this may change in the future, obviously, because if the government's considering imposing an age restriction, that would have a flow-on effect to then can they actually be on an e-bike in any event? So depending where that age restriction comes in will depend on, what type of e-bikes are going to be allowed on the footpath and when and whether there's a supervising adult. Um, Based on what we know right now, parents may still be able to ride an e-bike on the footpath if their accompanying child is on a regular bike. Um, but again, it's sort of one of those watch this space things for this in particular, because this will change once that age restriction comes in, and we simply don't know the detail right now. So it'd be one to sort of keep in mind or to circle back to Bicycle New South Wales again once those laws are known. Can I throw back to you for a final question, Peter?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So if you were buying an e-bike, May 2026, so right now, what advice would you just give to people in general? I'm sure that there's a lot of misconceptions out in the marketplace at the moment. So parents are trying to buy a bike for their kids or they're trying to buy one for themselves. There's new laws coming in. You know, what's the best way of dealing with this so that they're buying a bike that it's going to be good now, but also for the future.
Absolutely. We mentioned it earlier on, but the easiest thing to do is simply to assume that the 2029 laws have already come into place. So,
Mm,
good quality legal e-bikes, the EN 15194 European compliant e-bikes, last for many years. So buying one of those right now will not only ensure that you're compliant and safe and sound, and you've got a great form of transport or recreation device, to ensure that you're both legal now, but you've got a good quality bike, which is going to last you many years into the future as well. Like I said earlier, they're much better quality in almost every instance. They've got much better technology. They're well designed, and they've got much better batteries as well that aren't only safe, but they last longer as well. Will undoubtedly give you more range. A lot of the European devices, EN 15194 devices, on their lowest settings have ranges of over 100 kilometers in distance now before you have to
mm,
recharge them. So they're really, really quite exceptional, and they just keep getting better as well. So the other way you can obviously protect yourself is riding an e-bike responsibly and safely and in accordance with the New South Wales laws. Um, Now, riding with a helmet is always important. I'm sure plenty of people on this webinar tonight do that, which is great. They've saved me plenty of times, but we still see a number of people not wearing helmets. Not only is it the law, it's just the smart thing to do. So always wear a helmet. Um, and of course, if you do have a current e-bike, which is perhaps not fully going to be fully compliant in 2029, understand that that will come in place in March 2029, and you may have to look at changing your bike in there, depending on exactly what type of bike it is, and that'll obviously be going down to the 250 watts. Um, there is the age restrictions as well, which are likely to come in place. Like I said before, we are looking to try and make sure that that is as low as possible because we want to see more kids and teenagers riding safe, legal devices uh, as we possibly can see, because they're great for kids' independence and getting them out and from A to B safely. But keep an eye on that as well because that may change how you purchase an e-bike for your son or daughter, perhaps. And if you already have an e-bike greater than the maximum continuous rating power of 250 watts, be wary that they will actually become illegal as of March of 2029. So that's a really important point. But
mm.
again, I can't emphasize enough. Simply just ensure that it's that if you're buying now, EN 15194, you'll get a safe, compliant, and legal e-bike, not just now, but in many years to come as well. Make sure it's also got the sticker as well on it,
Mm.
compliance sticker, which is done during manufacture, because that way you won't have to get any changes done. It's going to be you won't have to touch it or do anything to it in 2029, which will be really, really important.
And on that point, as I understand it, Peter, there are some legal bikes at the moment that fulfill that criteria that don't have the sticker. So it might be worthwhile people reaching out to their either bike shops or off to the actual manufacturer or where they purchased it from to see if they can get that from a form of compliance. Is that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And there are some very well-known brands. Giant is one of them, for example. They make some great bikes and e-bikes. However, they don't actually, even though they're actually certified to EN 15194. Many of them, and they operate under a multiple 4 or 5 brands in Australia. Many of them don't actually have that sticker on them. So that's something we have to get government to look at as an amendment or an exemption within those current laws that are going to be changing. But it's either way, it's just going to be much simpler if you're purchasing a e-bike with that sticker on it. That way, you don't have to look at making any amendments into the future. Well, thank you very much, everyone. As always, ride safely and ride often as well. And look forward to talking to you very soon.